There is no fear in love, but perfect love casts out fear. That's taken from 1 John chapter 4, verse 18. And a question just to get us thinking as we start this evening. What would it look like to live in a world without fear? How would people interact differently with each other? Just take a moment to pause on that while I light candles. I was saying to someone earlier, it feels a little bit like I'm lighting an Advent candle, which made someone panic that we'd lost the whole of November in one go. So rest not, that hasn't taken place. So good evening, my name's Tim. I'm the student pastor here at St George's, and it's a great pleasure to be preaching this evening and continuing our series on living well together. Lizzie kicked off last week at 18:30, so if you weren't here, then I do recommend that you go and catch up either on YouTube or on our podcast. And this evening we are looking at living well together, this whole sermon series. This evening we're looking at casting out fear. So two little things, kind of objectives, I guess, that we're going for. Sorry, I used to be a teacher, so I apologise. Two objectives. Casting out fear. Being aware of our own fears, the impact they have, and bringing them to Jesus. And then secondly, creating confidence. How do we create relationships and community that help people to feel safe? So, as we start this sermon this evening, we're going to deal with the elephant in the room first, and then carry on. Those of you that have opened your paper Bibles to follow the reading will notice that it's in small writing, italics, and comes with a warning, this may not be in the Bible. So why am I preaching on it this evening? Let's deal with that first. So, the earliest manuscripts and many other ancient witnesses do not have this passage, John 7:53 to 8:11. A few manuscripts include these verses wholly or in part after John 7:36, John 21:25, Luke 21:38, or Luke 24:53. Much confusion, okay? I'm going to simply say this evening that many scholars agree that this event that we have heard is historically accurate, that it was passed down in oral traditions through the Christian faith. And so the question actually is not the validity of the account, but where the account sits within the text. And there are many reasons why it may or may not have been moved, why it might not have been scribed down. If you're interested, come and talk to me, or better yet, go and talk to Eve afterwards. And a key thing for us to always remember is that the Gospels are not an exhaustive list of the things that Jesus did or said. Okay, so they're only an eyewitness account of certain parts. So, hopefully, kind of dealt with the elephant in the room, but you can come and ask me afterwards if you want to. But our key focus this evening, our two kind of key questions that I want us to hold on to as we explore this narrative, is what do we learn about Jesus, and how does that encourage us to come to him? What do we learn about Jesus? How does that encourage us to come to him? So, let's summarise the passage that Charmaine kindly read to us. So Jesus comes into the temple courts. He sits down and begins to preach. The Pharisees bring in a woman that they have caught in the act of adultery. It's as it sounds. Think Bridget Jones walking in on Daniel Cleaver. Or the situation, I think, is well described by a song that was being played when I was in Mannahatta the other night. Honey, come in, and she caught me red-handed, creeping with the girl next door. It wasn't me. They are using the woman to trap Jesus into disobeying the law of God. Jesus responds by, not really responding. He bends down, he writes something unknown in the ground. Everyone around leaves, the Pharisees, onlookers, until only Jesus and the woman are left. Jesus then directly addresses the woman, asking her, "Woman, where are they?" The woman responds, and Jesus gives her the chance to walk free with the words, "Neither do I condemn you. Go now and leave your life of sin." So that's a summary of what we've just read. So what do we learn? We're going to take a few minutes now to begin to work through that and then think about how that applies to us today. So we start off with a context from 7:53 through to 8:2 that sets the scene for this narrative story. It's taking place at the Festival of the Tabernacle. We see that at the start of chapter 7, if you turn back. And Jesus has been teaching over the last few days of this festival, and division is beginning to build. Who is he? Is what he's saying right or wrong? And then he's left, he's slept, and returned in the morning to carry on teaching. He's teaching in the temple courts, a large open public space, where passers-by would have come to gather and listen to hear Jesus, this rabbi, teaching. They'd be interested in what he's got to say. So that sets our scene. Jesus is there, he's teaching. A woman is brought in, verses 3 and 4. This woman is in an incredibly vulnerable place. Women in the first century were lower than second-class citizens. A woman's protection came from her husband or her family. And none of them, it seems, are present at this scene. And more than that, with her adultery, she's probably rejected any potential family that she has. But where's the man in this situation? There's a phrase that Strictly uses, it takes two to tango. And here we are in this story. Why is the woman here by herself? And let's not kind of dodge around this. This woman is expecting to die. The Pharisees say the law of Moses says that we should stone her. Think how vulnerable this woman is in this situation. We learn from verses 5 through to the start of 6 that this is a trap for Jesus. This is not a theoretical situation. Often we come across these kind of questions and situations thrown at Jesus in the Gospels, and it's like, teacher, rabbi, what do you think? How do I inherit eternal life? Who's my neighbour? And we get these theoretical questions. This is a live situation. This woman is being used as a pawn by the Pharisees. The man isn't present that she's been caught in adultery with. This isn't about justice or about the adultery. This is the Pharisees using a woman to trap Jesus. Let's name it what it is. This is simply abuse. And so we have this situation where Jesus is teaching and this woman in complete vulnerability is thrown in front of him. How Jesus responds this second will actually make an impact to the woman in front of him. That's the reality of the narrative that we're dealing with this evening. And so our key question then is, how does Jesus respond? With that setup, with that there, how does he respond? Well, he writes on the ground. Strange. And in some ways even stranger that the story doesn't tell us. So we don't know what he writes on the ground. The only clue that we get is when he says, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first to throw the stone." Now, we could spend ages guessing what Jesus wrote, and maybe you want to in your small groups this week. But for this evening, let's instead think about the impact of what Jesus did. What actually happened? Well, everyone leaves. No one stays to condemn the woman. No one stays to throw a stone. We know that they could do. If we read on to the end of chapter 8, we see they try and stone Jesus. So it's within their willingness, but they don't. The woman is saved. Everyone's gone. Jesus responds with calmness to everyone in the situation by just writing. And he doesn't condemn the woman. He can. When thrust into this situation as a male rabbi in the first century, he could have condemned the woman. No one would have stopped him, and they may even have approved of what he said. But he chooses not to. Instead, he has saved her life. So what? What happens next? Everyone's left. There is just Jesus and the woman at the sea. Now again, in the first century, men and women are never alone together in public. That doesn't happen. So this is a strange situation to be in. I mean, it was strange and terrifying before, but it's still strange. And Jesus speaks to the woman. This is a massive thing to happen. Something that I think 2,000 years later we miss the impact of. A man would not speak to a woman in this context, particularly someone of a rabbi's status, to a woman who'd been caught in adultery. That conversation would not have happened. So the fact that it happens means that we have to have ears that listen and say, wow, what is Jesus doing? It's just like the woman at the well. By talking to her, Jesus honors her. He shows her value and treats her as an equal. Just by talking to her, he does all of that in one go. He then doesn't condemn her, but he forgives her. He lets her go free to live in freedom. But he also sends her with instruction to leave her destructive lifestyle behind, to live restored as a person. So as we were going through, what did you learn about Jesus? How does this encourage you to come to him? Well, this is what I've pulled out as I've prepared and spent time with this passage. That Jesus, in his response, demonstrates that the woman has dignity. Just by speaking, he demonstrates that. Jesus isn't influenced by the merciless Pharisees and those around. He responds calmly and gently. In speaking ahead of Jesus' coming, the prophet Isaiah writes in chapter 42, verse 3, "A bruised reed he will not break, and a smouldering wick he will not snuff out." Now, I couldn't make a smouldering wick, so I've just gone for lit candles. But that image is of something that is incredibly fragile, that even as Jesus touched, or in this case I'm going to blow because I'm not going to touch fire. That's a good one for bonfire night, isn't it, coming up? He would not blow it out. I'm going to blow it out because I'm not Jesus. That's another good thing, isn't it? A bruised reed or a smouldering wick he will not break or snuff out. Jesus responds gently and calmly. Even the most vulnerable, delicate person, he will respond to gently. He honors the woman and restores that. He does that by saving her from abuse, speaking to her and leading her into freedom. This is Jesus demonstrating perfect love. Let's think for a moment how this woman feels. What's her journey been in this narrative? Well, she's been living in this destructive lifestyle of adultery. She's been caught, exposed, and is expecting to die. She's been publicly shamed in the temple courts and is in a place of complete and utter vulnerability at the mercy of Jesus. She is then rescued from the Pharisees and onlookers. She's spoken to and honoured. She's restored and given a second chance. She's gone from death to life in a moment. So I think it's fair to say that she will feel honoured by the dignity that has been shown to her, valued by being spoken to. She'll feel in safety, having just been rescued from her situation, and restored by being given a second chance to live in freedom. This is how Jesus has responded to her. And this is why it's good news for us as followers of Jesus that we live following that same Jesus who is alive and reigns today, the God that we follow is a God who restores, a God who values, who honours. Perfect love casts out fear. It's not a theoretical statement, but a literal reality of following Jesus. This is the kingdom that Jesus speaks of so often in the Gospels, breaking into this woman's life. He did it for her, he can do it for us. He can do it for you, he can do it for me. We see from this narrative that we can come to Jesus, bringing our fear, ourselves at our most vulnerable and destitute. No matter how broken and vulnerable we feel, Jesus' response is kind and gentle. We can see and know that perfect love casts out fear. But what is fear for us today in Leeds? We don't often live in physical fear here in the West. But I think more specific for us this evening is emotional fear or insecurities. Through many conversations over the last few years, I've found that many of us know our insecurities or are covering insecurities. The American Psychological Association reports that insecurity is multifaceted. It pertains to an overall sense of uncertainty or anxiety about your worth, abilities, skills, and values as a person, conveying the message that you're at risk or in danger of something or someone. That negative impact of insecurity could be physical, mental, or emotional. Without security, you can't accomplish full trust or function to your fullest potential. Or more simply, we might say that insecurities are something that rob us of being fully human. They threaten our value and our worth. They disrupt our sense of safety and security. I feel our insecurities often leave us feeling in the same place as the woman in the narrative today. A sense of helplessness or vulnerability, of being scared of what is next. We're often aware of some of our own insecurities, and we try to do what we can to cover them and to not allow them to exist. But the world around us uses our insecurities. It plays upon them. We've just heard in the build-up to Christmas adverts. I think many Christmas adverts play on our insecurities. That we're not going to buy the best gift. That our Christmas won't look that perfect, picturesque thing round the dinner table. That our family isn't that perfect, wonderful family that gathers. To songs that trivialise them. Sometimes I'm shy and anxious. Sometimes I'm down on my knees. Sometimes I try to embrace all my insecurities, so I don't wear makeup on Thursday. To films that show them being played out in front of us. I referenced Bridget Jones earlier. And if you think through films 1, 2 and Bridget Jones' Baby, there's that whole sense of insecurities of Bridget Jones being played out in front of us. From getting a job, from being promoted, to starting into a relationship, from having a baby. We laugh along, but actually, what we're laughing at. Social media, full stop. We all know it plays on our insecurities. Anywhere in our lives that generate FOMO or FOBLO, the fear of being left out. Everything keeps our insecurities near the surface. We can't get away from them. We bury them and try to live as if they are normal. The problem is that this means we end up living not being fully human. We think that might be okay because it's my choice and just impacts me. However, I think often we don't recognise or appreciate that our insecurities impact those around us by the way that we react to them. The phrase "you do you" comes to mind. But I think it's worth giving some examples to help us think through the impact on others. I think sometimes our insecurities can lead us to forming cliques, to thinking that I'm sorted, I've got this tight friendship group, and I don't need to open up or think about anyone else. They can lead us to trying to control everything in our lives, to manage everything in our lives. And so it requires other people to fit into that strict management that we've put, and to live their lives in order to help us control ours. Leads us to avoidance, to not doing things, to be people that aren't reliable, to hurt those around us, to say things to try and cover where we feel hurt, but in what we say can hurt others close. Or one-upmanship, pulling people down. We can't let other people enjoy their own success. We have to have been able to have done the same as them. Or we try and trivialize what they have achieved because we know deep down it's tugging on something we don't want to acknowledge. I know in that list that I will have tugged on some uncomfortable truths. And I'm very aware because I know there's uncomfortable truth for me too. But more about that in a moment. Perfect love casts out fear. Jesus wants whole, holistic restoration for all of us. He says to you and me tonight that he doesn't want us to live gripped by fear in any way. Whether tightly or loosely, he wants us to know the freedom that only he can offer us. That's unlikely to mean sudden transformation tonight, although we know that God can do that. However, it does hopefully mean a transformation of our thinking. That insecurities aren't something to just be tolerated and lived with. That tonight you can leave knowing that Jesus wants restoration for you, and with the truth that you can begin to seek him further. To be honest to close friends and find the appropriate level of support, professional or otherwise. Now, the other part of our pastoral principle from living well together is to create confidence in community, to help people to feel safe and real, to share honestly, knowing the way that we respond to differences and difficulties. A key way of creating this sort of community and culture is to model it, to share honestly and invite that trust from others that they can expect from you. Now, rather than just talk about it, I thought we might do it this evening. So bear with me as we talk a little bit as if we're in a small group this evening. Now, we know that our small groups are places of community at church, is a place for us to walk through life together, to discover more of who Jesus is and the renewal that he brings to all of us. As I've planned and prayed through preparing this talk, there are various parts I found difficult, and I've genuinely been bowled over by the way that Jesus responds to the woman in the passage. As we talk about insecurities, I've been reflecting on myself, and I'm going to share something simply that Jesus has been speaking to me about. Now, I struggle with the feeling of not being able to do something well enough. Whether a task, a conversation, writing a talk, actioning a decision. Realise the implications it has on those around me. It causes me to avoid things, to just not do them. Sometimes it plays out as procrastination, sometimes as dislike or dismay for something. Now, it's still there. I've become more aware of it, more aware of how it's impacting those around me. But I've also become much better at bringing it to Jesus, of knowing that when it's something that's playing on my mind, making me act in different ways, that I can bring it to him. Our small group communities are places to share, to be honest and real, to want the best for others in the group as they want the best for us. So, in summary this evening, perfect love casts out fear. From our narrative this evening, we see that the woman, fearful, in complete vulnerability, at the mercy of Jesus. We see the way Jesus responds, showing the woman value, honour, and restoring the woman to freedom. The invitation for all of us tonight is to bring our fears, our insecurities to Jesus. It will be hard, but we know and can have confidence in how he will respond, with calmness and gentleness. For perfect love casts out